Hi, and welcome to our presentation. I am Ryan Armstrong. I'm a technical writing manager here at Jamf, and with me is Brendan Paulsek and Becca Hawkus, two technical writers on my team. In this session, we're going to talk about the Wordsmith team, which is the technical writers team, and we're going to talk about how we as a team work together and how we work with other departments within Jamf to create content that helps our users succeed. And hopefully throughout this presentation, you'll see some new things that we're working on. You'll see the things that we're doing to forge success for you as well as ourselves. And then you'll see what we're working on right now and exactly how that work is being done with you, the user, in mind. And then finally, we'll talk about what's in the fire. What are the things that the wordsmiths are working on, and what will you see in the near future out of our team and out of the technical communication group as a whole. So let's start with the people actually doing the work. Like I said, Becca and Brendan here are two of my team members, and we are divided up by product group. So there are two managers, me being one, and then my partner is in charge of Jamf Pro and the writers there. I have the continuous development group and the security group. So any of the tools that we have that fall under continuous development, such as Jamf Now, Jamf Connect, Jamf Protect, Jamf School, that falls under my group. And then we have two senior technical writers, Brendan being one of those, one for each of those two pillars, let's say, so to speak. We don't call them silos because we work together almost completely throughout the week. We also have three security technical writers, which are experienced writers who have a security background. So they've worked on other security products before joining Jamf, and they handle our security products, but also have been working with our marketing teams and our technical support teams to create content that is useful for users inside and outside of the product. We have 5 technical writer 2s, and this is kind of the backbone of our writing group. These are experienced writers who are, some of them are very well versed in the tools that they're using. They have a lot of experience with our products, and they have a lot of experience in technical writing in general. And then we have 3 tech writer 1s. These are fairly junior writers, but they have a lot of experience with our tools because our onboarding process is pretty intense, and they have a lot of opportunities to get really deep into our products. Since I started just about a year ago, we've grown from 8 writers to 12 writers, 13 writers. Sorry, we have one new hire, but we've done a lot of growth because of the importance that we've seen of expanding our technical content, expanding our documentation, and then also in the expansion of our products as well. The wordsmiths, the technical writers themselves, are part of a larger tech comm group. And what's really cool about this, coming to Jamf from other companies, it's amazing that we have the ability to focus on the content, focus on the user, because we have a support team that operates around and with us. And that includes a senior manager who is sort of, the senior manager is our liaison with the rest of the company, with the rest of product management, which is what we report to, and content strategy. And then we have an information architect who their job is to make sure that our content flows well together, that it is presented correctly, and that it matches the intentions of our products. So the information architect really designs the layout and the strategy of the content as a whole. I've never had this in my entire 20-something career as a tech writer, but we have 2 DocOps developers, which are the people that are in charge of publishing our content, making sure that it's up and ready, always accessible by end users. They handle all the technology behind creating our documentation, publishing our documentation, and then serving it up to the users. It's great to have these people on our team because we don't, as writers, don't have to focus on the technology of publishing. So we focus on the technologies that we're supporting, and we focus on the words that we're writing. And another thing that I've never had before are 2 dedicated localization specialists, one being a QA localization QA specialist and the other being a project manager specialist, but they handle our localization into the many languages that we translate and localize our content into. This, again, keeps the writers from having to deal with a translation company and the back and forth that happens there. So they pass off the content to the localization people, and then they can kind of forget about it until it's time to test links and get the stuff ready for release. So this team is integral into how we operate as a team because they take off the overhead that a lot of tech writing teams have. So it allows us to create the content that you as the user need. So why are there so many people? It seems like a lot of people for a tech writing group, and I get that. People believe that Jamf is a small company, and in some cases we are. However, we have a lot of products that we support. And we are an agile workplace. We have most of our teams operate in a Scrum, Agile Scrum methodology. And each writer supports an average of 3 teams. So imagine, most teams have one developer or have several developers, several QA, a product owner, and a Scrum Master. So that means one writer is supporting 3 sets of those. It may be they're all within the same product, but some writers support multiple products. So having the number of writers that we do allow them to attend the stand-up meetings and be really tied to the new features that are being worked on so that they can understand their products and be there and make decisions when they're happening and not way after the fact and trying to document things that are thrown over the fence after development is finished with it. Having the number of writers that we have and having the support system that we have means that we are right there and can document the features and be responsive to customers as it happens. Our writers also lead cross-product projects. Some of these projects are things like migrating to new tools, making sure voice and tone is the same, keeping our style guide up to date. Anything that all writers need to do, the cross-product projects are how they're handled. And this happens across those columns or those pillars of people. And then they're responsible for both content and tickets. So if they have ownership of a feature area or a product line, they're not just responsible for creating new content, they're responsible for any tickets that are generated about the content, or for the product that content supports. So now I'm going to pass it off to Becca, and she's going to talk about forging success.
Hi everyone, my name is Becca. I'm a technical writer 2 here at Jamf, and I'm going to talk about our documentation process as well as our best practices. So forging success, we as technical writers, there are certain processes that we do follow in order to create successful and meaningful documentation, and we follow this process through the entire release cycle. So to take you through our documentation process, we start every release cycle with our sprint planning. We are involved from the very beginning with our development teams. meeting with our teams to figure out the scope of our projects, what's going to be releasing each cycle, bug fixes and enhancements that we need to target for each release. That moves us into production, and that's the time that we spend writing and researching and creating the text for our different tickets and for our different documentation tasks. Once we have our draft complete, that moves into our release cycle, which is a very consistent and thorough release cycle. We get a peer review from another technical writer on our team, as well as a development team review to make sure all of our content is correct and all technical information makes sense and is correct. Once we have our review cycle complete, we move into beta testing, and this is where our content is updated based on any additional review feedback that comes from beta testing, as well as additional tickets that are assigned to us from beta testing. Once that's complete, we move into finalizing our content, updating it from any last-minute tickets, any last-minute reviews, any additional research that we come across during our documentation process, and that's moved into, it's sent to localization where it's translated and then prepared for delivery for our customers. All right, next I'm going to walk you through our day-to-day process with the different tickets that we as technical writers encounter. We are in charge of researching, maintaining, and incorporating these tickets into our documentation process. The first ticket that we encounter are dev tickets. Dev tickets are tickets that we as writers create in tandem with the tickets created by our engineering teams for specific features. These tickets are tracked in the same project as the engineering team, and they move through the columns as the work completes for each team. Our next would be defects. These are different issues that come up that needs updating for documentation. There are multiple flavors of defects, and for the most part, writers track these defects in a specific project and write defect descriptions right on the ticket. Our next ticket would be service desk. These originate from internal Jamfs making requests from anything like they see a typo in our documentation or they see a new deliverable that needs to be added to our documentation. And then our last would be our TWTP tickets. These tickets are the backlog of TechCom, and that represents anything from documentation maintenance to new projects to new deliverables that we think should be incorporated into our documentation. And then last, we have our UX tickets. These tickets come for creating text that you can see on our websites or our different apps. And we are involved with the entire process from the beginning of creating the words needed, review process, and then seeing the end result show up on our website. And then next, I'm going to talk a little bit about our style. Consistency is very important here at Jamf. Not only do we strive to make our documentation match our website and the UI, but we also adhere to the Apple Style Guide daily to ensure that we're consistent in all aspects of our content. It's very important that we stay on brand and on message, and you can see this reflected through the different font styles that we use, the colors that we use, and the images that we use throughout our documentation. And this ties in with consistency, our voice and tone. We as writers want to make sure that our voice and tone stays consistent through all of our writing. And this means that we want, neutral and casual voice when talking to our customers. We want to stay neutral, but also enthusiastic in our tone so that, you're excited to do what you're doing and everything, comes off lighthearted while also staying very true and technical to our content. And then I'm going to bring this back to Ryan.
Yeah, so the Content Creator Sync is a thing that we've started fairly recently where we are bringing in anyone within Jamf, any of the Jamfs who do content creation. So once a month, we have a rather large meeting where the documentation managers, the information architect, and then members of marketing, communications, marketing, product marketing, technical support, education, and content strategy, we all meet to talk through things like what changes do we need to make to our glossaries? What do we need to do? What are we working on right now that may help another department? And then also, what projects are we working on that may accentuate each other, or can we work together to bring it to completion? One major project we've worked on, or we're working on, is a new getting started system or an onboarding system for our customers that we are going completely across all the different departments to create. And it's been a great it's been great seeing it going from discussion to production. And hopefully you'll hear more about this soon at JNUC and then afterwards. All right. And then our next section is going to be taken by Brendan, and it's the on the Anvil section.
Thanks, Ron. Hey, everyone. My name is Brendan, and today I'm going to get to talk to you about on the Anvil. So how does the work of the writer get to the customer? A little bit about what's behind the scenes there of what the writer is working on, and a little bit about our content migration, as well as kind of just highlighting some of the primary resources for each of our products. So the post-production process. So Becca just showed us steps 1 through 5, where the writer is working with the development teams and our subject matter experts to create meaningful content. However, the last step here is localization and the doc ops process that Ryan kind of alluded to earlier. So once our English content is final for release or for publication, our doc ops specialists, they export all of our work in HTML and they do a final QA. They are just looking for broken links or just maybe spot checking to make sure all the formatting is as expected. Then our localization team, they export all of our XML-based content and they send it to our localization partners where they translate in all of our primary languages, which includes Japanese, French, German, and Spanish, as well as a few others. Once we get that back, which can take, depending on the amount of content changes, anywhere from 2 to 5 business days, that gets imported back into our system and then it's ready for publication into all of the languages. Our content's all published on docs.jamf.com. And from there, that's where the customers can have access. So our content migration, this is mostly something that's happening behind the scenes right now. However, in the long term, and even the short term, really, as we begin to realize the benefits, is going to have great benefits to our customers. For starters, our knowledge base articles, which used to live on jamfnation.com, have been switched to a technical articles library, which is also hosted on docs.jamf.com. This is part of a larger content strategy, whereas you may have noticed recently, Jamf Nation had a huge overhaul, and part of that was removing the K-base and moving it to a tech articles library that TechCom can manage and publish completely on their own. Confluence to Heredo. Confluence is an Atlassian plugin tool that we used to use to publish most of our documentation. It worked for us for many years. However, as we have grown, we have found it's been harder and harder to use, and it's not very extensible to the amount of products we have at Jamf. Therefore, starting at the beginning of this year, we started migrating our content to Heredo CCMS, which is a modern authoring tool. It's more robust. It allows us to reuse content across our products, and it helps us as writers focus on the writing and not so much the formatting and structure. This has been a very exciting project for our team, and we're nearing the end of it. Currently, we have Connect, Protect, and Jamf Now content in this system, and we look to have Jamf Pro in this system soon. Lastly, we've moved pretty much all of our PDFs to an HTML website for publication. This helps us just kind of ensure that all of our content's being published through this docs.jamf. It all looks the same. And also it allows us as writers to spend less time formatting and spot checking PDFs, which was a huge part of our post-production process. And once again, just focus on writing meaningful content. So here's kind of an example of our Jamf Connect content before and after. this is a version of our Jamf Connect Administrator's Guide before it was moved to our new design and our new content management system. And this is how it looks now. As you can see, for the most part, the layout and structure is somewhat similar. However, behind the scenes, it's modular, and it will allow us to make any kind of changes to the larger structure of this per customer suggestion. Also worth noting is it has more robust linking abilities within a guide. So rather than trying to display all related information on a single page and having customers kind of scroll, we have this related information section that's automatically populated and shows us related information that a customer can navigate to after reading whatever page they're currently on. Now I'm going to just go through and just kind of highlight some of the main things we have for all of our products concerning documentation, starting with Jamf Pro. Jamf Pro is by far our largest flagship product. It's been around forever. It was formerly Casper Suite, if you've been a long-time Jamf Pro user. And our documentation with it is primarily in the Jamf Pro Administrator's Guide. It is this large, robust encyclopedia of Jamf Pro, and in some ways the Apple ecosystem itself. The target audience here is mostly intermediate to advanced IT administrators, people that are enrolling devices and managing devices on a day-to-day basis. Jamf Pro also has a couple other resources that we use to support it, just because there's so many workflows and information that we need to give Jamf Pro users. Our technical articles, for one, are mostly for Jamf Pro. And then our tech papers are also dedicated to Jamf Pro. The difference between these two different resources being that the technical articles specialize in troubleshooting and integration workflows, and then the tech papers are kind of a more curated end-to-end workflows with very specific goals in mind. Jamf Pro, like I said earlier, is soon going to transition to our new content management system. And we're also looking to kind of shift from this encyclopedia, non-prescriptive documentation deliverable to something a little more specific prescriptive. So we'll be working very closely with our subject matter experts as well as customers to kind of make sure we're documenting the most meaningful and commonly used workflows with Jamf Pro. Jamf School, formerly Zuludesk, also has a primary deployment guide and documentation all in one. However, with Jamf School, the thing to know here is that the writers for this team are writing for multiple audiences within the education space. For example, there are teachers, students, and then of course our IT administrators. So in addition to this deployment guide and documentation, we also have kind of subsets of documentation that can be distributed just to teachers and just to parents. There's also the Jamf School Security Overview, which is very similar to the Jamf Pro Security Overview. Jamf Protect, this documentation, and it's also hosted on docs.jamf.com, was just released about 2 years ago at JNUC, and has been iteratively evolving since. It is our flagship security product, and therefore the audience here is more advanced IT administrators, cybersecurity specialists, and security specialists specifically knowledgeable of Mac security. At this time, the Jamf Protect documentation mostly focuses on deployment as well as strategy and how to collect meaningful information from endpoints for security admins to interpret and report to C-level individuals. However, going forward, we're going to focus more on remediation, as in how do we take threats detected by Jamf Protect and use Jamf Pro to remediate them. All right, in Jamf Connect, as I mentioned earlier, we have the Jamf Connect documentation, and it's all about our identity management solution. The target audience here is definitely more advanced IT administrators, and our documentation mostly focuses on deploying this and helping administrators integrate Jamf Connect to help them create accounts and maintain passwords on the Mac. Historically, the deployment has been quite complicated with Jamf Connect, and therefore the documentation was quite multifaceted. However, on the development side, we have been adding quite a few deployment improvements, which is yielding more universal and easier to follow documentation as well. Also worth noting is Jamf Connect has a very large preference key reference. It's kind of an a la carte of settings. There are over 100 of them, and it allows administrators to kind of look through this and pick which ones are right for them. And that is also part of the challenge here, is that Jamf Connect is an identity product, and we support over 5 identity providers. Therefore, we need to have meaningful instructions on how to integrate this product with all 5. And lastly, Jamf Now is our MDM that's meant for small businesses. The Jamf Now documentation used to live in a completely separate Salesforce solution, and we just migrated it to our new CCMS, Hereto, which is very exciting because for the first time, Jamf Now documentation among our writers lives in the same space, and it's already opening up opportunities for us to collaborate with this team more. The Jamf Now's Getting Started webpage acts as a resource for the processes and information needed to set up your Jamf Now account mostly. And also with the recent updates to the Now documentation, we're able to localize it as well, something we weren't able to do earlier. The documentation also integrates a handful of YouTube videos that complement the written documentation on page, which is a fantastic add for our customers, and it is something we're looking to do for some of our other products as well. And lastly, I'm going to pass it off to Ryan to talk a little bit about our most recent product addition, which was Wandera.
Yeah, so we at Jamf have completely committed to folding in Wandera as a company and as a product into our Jamf identity. So we've already inherited or we brought in our the Wandera technical writer onto our team, and we've started the content transition to get it from the Wandera CMS into our own CCMS, so that our contents can be married, and we can make sure that the glossaries are the same, and we can make sure that the voice and tone is the same. This is a investment that we've put in, so it's an investment that we as a team have put in, and we have been diligent about making sure that we're not just making Wandera Jamf, we're taking the best things of Wandera and making adjustments to Jamf content if the Wandera content is closer to industry standards or closer to industry guidelines for things like what you call something, what an endpoint is, that sort of thing. So we're looking forward to Wandera being fully a Jamf product, and we're looking forward to the integration points and the many different documentation sets that we're going to have that are going to be an amalgamation of the Wandera content and the Jamf content. And just wanted to point out that docs.jamf.com, I know that Brendan and Becca have alluded to this, but this is our site. We are in the process of making additional changes to this platform, but this is where you go now for all Jamf documentation. No matter where it's being stored right now, it is all linked to docs.jamf.com. You will see this changing. You will see more content being added, but you'll be able to, you can now search by or list it out by individual product line. But this transitions well to our last section of what's in the fire. What's in the fire are the initiatives and the things that we're working on right now to make our products and our documentation better and more usable for our customers. And a lot of what we've done has been because of customer feedback. A good part of this is based on UX tests, feedback through support, and feedback through things like JNUC and our many meetings with customers. So as I said before, our prescriptive content changes is really a complete rethinking of how we present our content. Instead of everything being at the top level, it's what most people need by going to that topic. What are the things that you need to do to be successful with the product? Topics will be based on solutions, based on problem / solution pairings, and it won't be as difficult to get in, to find a nugget that you're looking for going through a page full of text. We're going to add process flows. It's really exciting what we're going to be able to do, and the team is looking forward to this, and we're going to be able to really streamline and forge that success for our users. Completely moving to Hereto with our Jamf Pro tools is going to allow this because Hereto has a lot more of a modular-based backend that allows us to create content that's used multiple places, but only changed one time. So it makes it easier for us to keep content consistent across the board. The worst thing to do is to go to one page and finding information different than another page, when we have a system in the back end that allows us to make sure that we're using the same content in both places. With a move to a more robust documentation platform, we're looking to add documentation feedback at the topic level. I know that we're a little behind in the times with some of our some other major software players. Microsoft, Apple have this on a lot of their systems, where you have at the bottom of every documentation page, it was this helpful, and then be able to leave comments. We want to get that feedback loop in your hands so that you can get that information to us quickly. Right now, as Becca talked about, the best way to do that is through support, because support put in service desk tickets for customers on a regular basis. And then the last part are these better onboarding workflows that I talked about, that our customers, that our content creators group is working on. And this is completely from customer feedback that people need help with our onboarding, with their onboarding of new employees, and then also with our own onboarding of new Jamfs. Having better workflows for our products that basically are things like, what are the top 10 things I need to do to be successful in Jamf Pro? These are the type of things we're looking at, and we're releasing very quickly. So you'll see this first in our new types of things we're working on. It'll be prescriptive, it'll be driven by Hereto, and it'll have a lot of the things that we're looking for in the future for all of our documentation in a very much smaller subset that has been created across all of Jamf. So we're really excited about our future. We're excited about our documentation. We're excited about Jamf as a whole, and we're really excited to work more closely with our customers going forward to help you become more successful in your jobs. So thank you for listening to us, and have a great rest of your JNUC virtual conference.